for July the 21st to order, please. Andrew, could you call the roll?
Thank you, Mary Haydu. Let the record reflect that all council members are present.
Thank you. Leslie, could you bring us out of closed session?
Yes, the council met on all the closed session items on item A and B that was pertaining to liability claims for sewer damage. There were status reports on both of them, and action is pending my doing further research on some conflict issues. On item C, no action taken, and Councilmember Cordy recused himself. I also wanted to note on item B, Councilmember Mosier recused himself, and B. And on D, there's no action, and that completes my report for closed session.
Thank you very much. Let's stand and say the pledge. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1, we were supposed to have a presentation by Parks and Rec. They will not be here today, so it's going to be continued until our September the 2nd meeting. So we'll go to community announcements. I don't have anything for oral communications. And I don't see anybody turning in anything quickly. Is there any governing body actions or comments? All right, I've got a few announcements. We've got committee vacancies. We're trying to continue to recruit from our community to fill these vacancies on a number of the boards and committees. Currently, we have the following vacancies. One is the Finance Committee. There are 3 upcoming vacancies for the term that expires in August. The San Diego Lagoon will have 2 vacancies that expire in August also. Traffic and Parking Advisory Committee, there's 1 vacancy, and that is for a commercial retail representative. The application deadline has been extended to August 4th. Their mayor's office hours, I'm continuing those. We continue to hold regular office hours at City Hall to be available for residents and business owners to come and talk to me about issues and concerns. Office hours are generally held on Wednesdays of the week prior to City Council meetings. My next office hours will be Wednesday, August 27th from 3 to 5. Please call City Hall at 858-755-9313 before coming down or to schedule an appointment. Since in August we will not be having any until the 27th because of we're not having any council meetings, so we're dark then. Scott, do you have anything?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay. Andrew, could you please read the consent calendar, but before you read the consent calendar, I'd like to move items 13, 14, 16, and 18 to consent, if that's all right with council.
Say those again, please. 13,
14, 16, and 18. Is that, wait a minute, is that all right with council to add those? Okay, Cheryl.
I'd just like to point out that the drought awareness, we are now in the stage 2 drought alert, and I would hate to have this go on consent and not have the public be aware that Del Mar is actively going to be using the website in many ways to let the public know how to preserve water.
So is it all right if it's on consent? Now that you've said that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so Andrew, could you please read the consent calendar?
Thank you, Mary Haydu. The following items are on the council's consent calendar for consideration this evening. Item 2 is the approval of minutes from the July 21st, 2014 regular and special meetings. The recommended action is to approve the minutes. Item 3 is the ratification of list of demands dated July 21st, 2014, and the recommended action is to ratify the list of demands. Item 4 is the waiver of reading of ordinances on the agenda, and the recommended action is to waive the reading of ordinances. Item 5 is an appointment to the Sustainability Advisory Board. The recommended action is that the council liaisons to the Sustainability Advisory Board recommend that the City Council appoint Nitsa Leckling to serve the remainder of Greg Hibbard's existing term, expiring August 1st, 2017. Item 6 is adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a 2-year agreement for the interim use of the community building at 225 9th Street by the Del Mar Foundation. The recommended action is that the council adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an interim use agreement between the City of Del Mar and the Del Mar Foundation. Item 7 is an approval of an engineering services contract for the San Elijo Joint Powers Authority wastewater force main project, adoption of resolutions amending the fiscal years 2013-14 and 2014-15 operating and capital budget, and authorizing the filing of an application for a state revolving fund loan. The recommended action is that the City Council authorize the City Manager to execute a contract for engineering design services with Atkins North America Incorporated for the San Elijo Joint Powers Authority wastewater force main in the amount of $146,960, and authorize amendments to the contract for an additional not-to-exceed amount of $20,000 for unforeseen design changes, and adopt the proposed resolution to amend the fiscal years 2013-14 and 2014-15 operating and capital budget, and adopt the proposed resolution authorizing the City Manager to file an application to the State Water Resources Control Board's State Revolving Fund to finance the construction of the project. Item 8 is an approval of an agreement with Time Warner Cable Enterprises, LLC, to install localized Wi-Fi hotspots at certain city-owned facilities. The recommended action is that the City Council authorize the City Manager to execute an agreement with Time Warner Cable Enterprises, LLC, or TWC, to allow TWC to install localized Wi-Fi hotspots at various city-owned properties for the convenience of TWC's customers and the public, and allow the City Manager to make appropriate modifications to the agreement subject to the concurrence of the City Attorney. Item 13 is a review of the schedule and process for water, wastewater, and clean water rate setting, and the recommended action is to review and approve the proposed timeline for the water, wastewater, and clean water rate setting process. Item 14 is an adoption of a resolution declaring drought response stage 2, drought alert. The recommended action is that the City Council adopt the proposed resolution declaring a drought response stage 2 to be in effect within the City of Del Mar. And item 16 is an adoption of resolutions approving amendments to the employee classification plan to adopt revisions to the seasonal worker job descriptions, amendments to the City of Del Mar miscellaneous part-time, temporary, and hourly employee compensation plan, and amendments to the city's personnel rules and regulations manual. The recommended action is to adopt the proposed resolutions to implement revisions to the seasonal worker job description, amendments to the miscellaneous part-time, temporary, and hourly employee compensation plan, and amendments to the city's personnel rules and regulations manual that pertain to miscellaneous part-time, temporary, and hourly employees. Item 18 is authorization to terminate a grant agreement with the County of San Diego for the Vector Habitat Remediation Program, Court Street to 28th Street Drainage Ditch Project. And the recommended action is that the City Council authorize the City Manager to request a termination for convenience of the grant agreement with the County of San Diego Department of Environmental Health for the Vector Habitat Remediation Program, Court Street to 28th Street Drainage Ditch Project. That concludes the items on the consent calendar this evening.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Yes, Terry.
2 questions on 7 and 8 for the city manager, just brief questions. Number 7 is about the state revolving fund application. That theoretically would be a very low percentage interest rate, is that correct?
Correct.
Where would that funding actually come from our budget if we were to get that?
Well, they would provide the financing, and then we would pay for that under the wastewater utility fund.
Okay, from the wastewater utility.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And number 8, the Time Warner Wi-Fi issue. I saw in the report that it was one of the first or the first city to do this kind of application. Is that correct?
It's my understanding we would be the first one in San Diego County, but they have other cities, and I believe Los Angeles is one of them.
Okay, so it's nothing unique to California or anything like this?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar, including all the items that were added.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's passed. The consent calendar has been approved. So since we're before 6:30, I'm going to move item 11 up to now. So who's presenting item 11? Kathy. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Tonight is an initial consideration. It is an appeal of the in lieu parking fee 14-02, and it is appeal of just the fee calculation for the associated new restaurant, Bull Taco, at 1201 Camino del Mar. As a bit of chronology, the appellant applied for an in lieu parking fee program in March 31st of this year and signed a lease with the Bull Taco on April 2nd. On April 2nd, staff issued a conditional approval letter for participation in the in lieu parking fee program. And on that the date of commencement was to be May 1st. As you well know, that decision was appealed by another party, and you conducted the initial consideration for that appeal on May 5th. You did not set the matter for a de novo hearing, so the in lieu parking, the in lieu fee parking program was approved for 14-02 on that action of you not setting the de novo hearing, which was May 5th. The appeal challenges the calculation of the in lieu parking fees from the date of the approval of the use, which was following May 5th council decision, and instead suggests that the fee should be calculated from the date that the establishment opened, which was when the restaurant opens, and the property owner says that that was June 27th, and requested a credit of over $2,800 for that period between May 1st through June 27th. The city staff calculated that the actual approval of the use was on May 5th with your action, and therefore calculated a credit of approximately $232 that was between May 1st, which was the original date that it was supposed to start, and May 5th, because they could not use the property for a restaurant while the appeal was being heard. The in lieu parking fee program guide to the process identifies in section 6, which is enlarged here, that the payment of in lieu parking fees shall occur prior to the issuance of any building permits or certificate of occupancies. In this case, those had been issued over a year prior. And it also identifies, which is shown down in yellow, that where no building permit is required, the payment of fees shall occur prior to the commencement of the use or the activity. So the question here is the definition of the commencement of use and activity. Staff calculated that that was based on the ability to use the property for the restaurant use, which required the additional parking, and that was the council action of May 5th. And the appellant challenges that it is the commencement of use was when the restaurant opened and the parking was actually needed. Council may set this matter for a de novo public hearing, or if you do not set it for a de novo hearing, it upholds the planning director's calculations of the fees being collected for the year 13-14 fiscal year for ILPF 14-02. And I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions?
Yes.
Don?
I had a question for the city attorney relative to this appeal, and the question is every action of the planning director appealable to the city council?
In situations where it's determined that the planning director's decision is ministerial, then those are not appealed to the city council. There are some other areas, but this is one where we have opined is not appealable to the city council.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions? Thank you, Kathy, very much. We have one speaker slip from George Conkright.
First, I'd like to give you a copy of this letter of conditional authorization. It says the annual fee shall be paid.
George, don't, you got to be at the microphone, please.
George Conkright.
State your address, please.
Ms. Delaney, if you would read that, at the bottom of the first page, it's bolded out, tells you that the annual fee shall be paid continually for the entire duration of the use. And that use did not start until they opened for business. So can you give the city council your legal interpretation of the bottom, down there at the bottom of the page that bolded out?
I have opined to staff on my opinion that the planning director's opinion is sufficient.
Well, her opinion is based on the covenant, which states that it's payable upon getting a building permit or a use permit. That's
George,
when the fee is to be paid.
George, you're supposed to be, you've got 3 minutes, and this is not a
Yes, ma'am,
question.
you've always interrupted me. Every time I speak here, I'm interrupted every 3 minutes. I mean, if I want to talk about nursery rhymes, I still got 3 minutes.
I understand, but it's not time to ask us. You're not supposed to be asking our attorney questions at this time.
Well, then this letter of authorization is included in your package. It wasn't included in the staff report, but it's in your package as a red dot, and it clearly states that the fee shall be paid for the entire duration of use. It says that the fee is payable upon getting a business license or a building permit, but it accrues during the use. Why would anybody charge me 57 days before you even start using the property, before the restaurant opens? Do you all have that red dot?
Yes.
And is there any question legally that, I mean, it's not only unfair to charge 57 days before the restaurant opens, that's grossly unfair, but legally, I'm not required to pay you in lieu parking fees until that restaurant opens for business. That's what your document says, and you drafted that document. And you got a letter there unanswered from August in 2013. It lists 9 other examples of your planning director's bias in dealing with my property. This is just one of them. I'm paying you $17,000 a year. If you capitalize that, that's $400,000 decrease in the economic value of my building, and you want another $2,600. That according to your own documents, you don't deserve. Are there any questions?
So this is an appeal, so what we have to do, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, is that if anybody would like to hear the appeal.
If there are 2 council members who want to
Yeah,
appeal,
I'm
it
sorry.
will go on to de novo.
Yes. So do we have 2 council members that want to hear the appeal? Any council members that want to hear the appeal? Seeing that there's no council members that want to hear the appeal, then I guess there's no appeal, right?
And the decision of the planning director is upheld.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next item, and that is item 15. Who's going to be doing that one? Scott?
John is.
John.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. This item tonight is regarding annual special events that occur within the city and directly those that impact public facilities. Each year, the city plays host to a variety of races and special events, and some of which impact traffic flow and use staff time. Approval for these events has varied historically. It's been handled by a variety of means. Sometimes they've gone to city council. In the last 2 years, there's been 2 events that have come to the council for approval. And other times, per the municipal code section 652030, the city manager has utilized his authority to make those approvals. Before you tonight, we are asking for your review and approval of Attachment C, which is a list of annual special events. Those events have successfully operated in Del Mar, and under a couple different things. They either directly benefit the community, they have benefits to the community for helping funding nonprofit organizations, or they generate beneficial business activity. The second part of tonight's item has to do with the municipal code section 6.52 and resolution number 200946. Staff has found that there's some inconsistencies in the language in between those 2 documents and also with our past practices. So we'd ask you to direct staff to come back with the next most convenient council meeting with recommended changes to clean up those various documents. And if there's any questions, happy to entertain them.
Any questions? Yes.
John, on the list, attachment C, there's a list of all the events, special events. Some of them are listed as not having cost recovery.
Correct.
Do we know what the costs are for these, or do we have any feel for what costs we're actually expending for some of these activities?
Yeah, I would say that they're de minimis expenditures, most likely primarily from our community services staff. A lot of these would be at places such as the Powerhouse, so our staffing would be there. And these would be mostly, or I believe all related to nonprofit events, either directly supported by the city or indirectly supported by the city.
So basically, in support of nonprofits, the cost recovery is very minimal, and we do not require permit fees. That's usually what.
That's correct.
Okay.
John, do we get more requests in for such events than these? And how do we handle those requests? If we have a maximum number of 22, how would we determine to close off an event? My thinking is that maybe Del Mar's sitting right in the middle of a race, and we would be preventing the race to happen, but I agree with having regulations. So just tell me a little bit about the process in case somebody asks me how to apply and what to do.
Sure. Many of these events that are on in Attachment C are reoccurring and have occurred in the city for many, many, many years. Some of the events are relatively new. They've been added within the last couple of years. In the council hearing the most recent events that you all approved, we started taking a closer look at the events that occur in the city, and that kind of led us to this item today. The process is to fill out an application. You can do so as much as a year in advance, and it gets routed through our various city departments as well as public safety. And as I mentioned, it's ultimately the city manager's discretion whether or not to grant that. We can grant it with different conditions of approval. There are some minimal things set forth, such as permit fees or insurance requirements,
Yeah.
and traffic safety, parking safety plans, that sort of thing. The past practice has been to exclude the nonprofit events from that list of the cap on the number of events, but we're right at that cap even if you exclude the nonprofits.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes.
So, John, the intent of this list is to basically describe that we are at capacity
Yes.
and that additional requests or modifications would have to be integrated with this list or changed. The list has to be changed.
Yeah, we'd actually go back and we'd either via resolution or via the municipal code or both make some changes, and that's what our intent would be, to bring forward those changes to you to make sure that there's continuity between the two documents, as well as to bring our documents in line with what the practices have been.
I think one of the ways to look at it is, and I think John said this pretty good, is that we have a number of kind of quasi-city sponsored events, or definitely partnershiped up with the Del Mar Foundation, and like concerts, and also with DMVA. So I think when we look at the municipal code, we'll probably have some sort of language that we would propose to use to exempt those from the number of events, and then try to stay within the 12 and manage that. And if there's a request that comes in above the 12, then we have a choice to either bring it back to council or just say we don't have the capacity to do it. So we're trying to get some control over the number of events that are coming into town, and distinguish between what are kind of, like I said, city sponsored or city connected events.
Thank you.
John, I heard some reports of events that weren't authorized by the city, but went through the city, and some complaints about early morning events on weekends. And so do you have any knowledge of any events that aren't on Table C?
Yeah, I think I know which one you're referring to. And there was an event that came through the city. So that event had passed through the city in prior years, and they indicated they wouldn't be passing through the city this year, and then the route came through anyways. So there was no application for a permit in that instance. Had there been, we would have considered it as per our normal process.
Yeah, we're going to prevent that from happening, or have a interesting confrontation for events that come through or try to come through the city without our approval. So I don't think that activity will go, I want to say maybe unpunished, for lack of a better word, because we just can't have that. It puts us all at risk in having activities going on that we're not staffed up for. And so that's part of what we're going to try to put in the special event process, is the number and the process, as well as how do we deal with those situations if they do come up.
And Scott, is the same kind of philosophy, is there a same philosophy regarding the beach and the number of, let's say, surf camps and all that kind of stuff? Is that a problem or not?
Well, I know we've, this last May, we started talking about that in terms of what our capacity is. And so the Community Services already has in place a way to limit that exposure. So they've turned other camps away already. I can bring back kind of an overview, or send you via email an overview of the system that they use. And part of that is trying to address the ones that have been here for a long period of time, that are, again, a benefit to the community, versus just the commercial businesses. And so I think that I would say that we're definitely on the threshold of not being able to allow more activity like that. So if they come along, it's got to be something that either is going to replace something that's existing, or has some mitigation so it doesn't affect the community as much.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes.
I'm just a little confused. I guess currently the ordinance limits the events to 12. Is that what I'm reading? Or
Yeah, that's actually regulated through the resolution.
the resolution?
Correct.
And limits to 12, and we've been having 20 or 22 recently. And every time a new event comes in, you have to come back to the council for permission, because procedurally that's the way it is. So you're saying that let's raise the 12 to a different amount, or are we asking specifically to approve these events in future years?
Okay, I think it's a couple fold. One is we're looking for approval of the list for this next year. So that's one action. I think we're going to come back to you, and we're going to suggest that some of these events are automatic approvals that would not go against the 12, and keep the 12 for really the higher impact race events that may come through the community that are bigger. And effectively, that's what we've done procedurally. The Del Mar Foundation and the DMVA events really have not been counted as part of the 12. That's why we have 22 in there. I think right now we have 8 or 9 race events that are showing here. The rest are, pretty much a Del Mar connected event. So I guess more specifically, we're going to come back and keep the 12 unless you tell us to whittle that down lower. And then we'll stick with that when people come in and just say, look, we got 12 spaces during the year for race events that are coming through the community, and stick to that. If you want that number lower, when we bring it back, that's the time to tell us, make it lower than 12.
So tonight, you want a motion from us?
Yeah, tonight, we want your direction on the list, so we'd like to get approval on the list that we have already, and then give us direction to bring back the ordinance in the procedural way that we're going to deal with it in the future.
So do we have a motion? Somebody like to make a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I have no speaker slips. Anybody from the public would like to speak? Since I don't have any speaker slips, we'll close it, and I guess council discussion. Boy, I was moving right forward,
Well, I'm still not clear, I guess, what specifically. I guess if what's being posed to us is that there are these typical summer concerts in the park and whatever that don't need qualify as the number of special events. I'm good with that. To the extent that we're asking for 12 plus that, I'm okay. I guess if we're asking for these specifically, it seems to me that then if something comes up, if I understand Cheryl's comment, if some other event comes up, it would be limited. We'd have to come back to the council for that.
But that's what we're going to bring back at the next discussion. We're going to have a dialogue with you about what your limit should be. We're going to give you some feedback and information on that as part of what we're going to bring back to you. And then you can make the decision at that time, and from there forward, we'll use whatever your guidance is on how we do the events. But we have people that need to, they need to know that everything's going forward, so...
So if I understand what you're asking for, I would move to approve, give guidance to update the resolutions so they're consistent, and accept this table as attachment C as the existing events, and we can talk about whether 12 is too many or too few the next time.
Correct. That's a good summary.
That's a motion? That's just a direction.
A motion direction. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. I have a couple comments. One of them is I notice the distribution of events pretty much evenly across the months, and that's a good idea. I think that staff input would be important. I'm sure that you talk to them about what's working, what's not working, because I respect their workload. And for example, there's 6 events in October, so is that working for them, and only 1 in December? So before you come back to us, could you have input from the Public Works and then the other group? And then I noticed we're getting about 15,000 gross for these events. Is that enough?
Go ahead.
So that number is specified, well, it's one of the things we're going to bring back.
Yeah.
Make sure I get this correct. The resolution identifies a flat fee based on the number of participants. And that's page 9 of the resolution. The municipal code section actually only states that we shall have cost recovery. So that's an undefined number. So the amount you're seeing, the permit fees, with the exception of one, it's $2,000, and that's all based on the participant numbers. And so one of the things we'll bring back to you is a clarification on which way we go with that.
Yeah, I think historically we'll charge out certain things that I would say are not covered by the $2,000 fee. So we'll have them work directly with the Sheriff's Department for Sheriff's Department additional deployment, which they'll pay directly. So there's some of that goes on depending on what the race is. So, and we'll bring that back. We'll have a better kind of robust summary of the whole process that we can then work with you.
So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. So it's unanimous, so we move on. Thank you, John. We move now on to item 9. This is our time-certain community forum on City Hall and Town Hall. We do this every council meeting. It's an open forum. If we'd like to make a presentation, it can be up to 10 minutes. You would have to make sure that staff knows that you're doing a presentation. Otherwise, comments are up to 30 minutes. This forum will not exceed, what? Of three.
3 minutes per person, 30 total.
Yeah, you got it, 30 total. So we had one red dot. Andrew, could you please read that for us?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Haydu. The council received correspondence from an individual who was unable to attend the meeting, so we're reading this letter into the record. It reads, "To the City Council, I wish I could participate in the meetings you've been holding, but with no way to get there, I'll offer a few comments here. I can't imagine that I'm the only one who want this site to be the city center or civic center, with City Hall being what you see when you drive down our main street. For this reason, I could never support any plan that promotes tucking it back out of sight behind other non-civic uses. Beyond that, I feel that any non-publicly oriented uses should be held to an absolute minimum. We don't need a site cluttered with possibly non-viable retail spaces. Perhaps there could be a small amount of retail in the presently unplanned plaza space, maybe a food court or whatever kiosk on wheels that could be relocated as space needs change with various activities. You could set parameters, coffee shop, sandwiches, little library, whatever seems appropriate, then hold a drawing to select the vendors. Also, since there seems to be room for the nonce, why not leave the existing TV building? It seems as good, better a use than some store that might or might not be successful. The studio was designed for free by a noted architect and it's paid for. Could it possibly be rented out at times along the lines of the Powerhouse and or used for the types of meetings that now occur in the annex? It seems a shame to demolish something with so much potential. If no longer needed as a TV studio, it seems a minor amount of alteration could turn it into an ongoing asset. It could always be removed later if space were needed for something new. Maybe it could house an affordable unit for someone hired to oversee the site. This could be an opportunity for the city to get at least one such unit. There has been an incredible amount of thought, time, and effort put into this round of planning for the site. Let's hope this time a new space for our deserving staff comes to pass." And that was submitted by Barbara Stegman.
Thank you very much. We have one other speaker slip for this. That's Jim Watkins. Okay. Our timer's not working, Jim. Oh, we don't see it.
It's going to be short.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim Watkins, 1552 Camino Del Mar. And at the last council meeting, Jacqueline Winter said that he felt the retail was risky and that basically the city shouldn't go take risk. And I agree with her on both issues 100%. On the other hand, in reference to the retail, I think the retail is vitally important to the overall community development from the standpoint that it is the retail that will continue expand the shopping, the business community, to make this the southern anchor for the city, so that you have the two anchors, the northern anchor and the southern anchor. That would go a great deal, a long way toward revitalizing your downtown and creating a more walkable community, so you get that walking back and forth. There'll be 190 parking spaces there, so they'll be parking at that end. Just a lot of reasons that the retail can help the overall community. And so, to go along with Jacqueline Winter, I agree that the city shouldn't take that risk. I think the easiest way to do that is simply the city always maintain 100% of ownership of the property forever, but they lease the commercial portion section of it to a commercial investor who will then take all the risk, develop that portion of the property, take all the risk so the city has no risk, but the city does have income from lease income, they have tax income, property tax income, and they've got sales tax income. So I think it's a vital element of the overall community plan, and that's all I have to say. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions of Jim? No questions. We have one more speaker. I'm sure it's Kit. No, it's not? I'm sorry. I saw. Oh, you put a different number. You surprised me. Arnie, you're here to speak on item 9, City Hall.
Yeah, thank you. Arnold Weissel, resident of Del Mar. And I actually didn't come here to talk about this because I was at
Could you state your address, please?
2139 Heather Lane. But I was at one of the workshops, and it was encouraging a lot of open minds and a lot of things to be considered. So very spontaneously, I'd like to add the little bit I know about city development. And I think there's fundamentally maybe two schools of thought. There's segregation and integration. And there are those that believe businesses go one place, something else goes another place. Then there are others where you see very thriving, thriving cities, and that's where, and they're talking integration and thriving cities, and our city is downtown. It only exists one place. It's downtown. And that's where the term integration, you'd start keying on that. And where integration is strongest, not to show disrespect to the segregationists, but where integration is strongest and where it works so well within cities is that actually it's a concoction of a lot of things going on. But when people are walking streets, typically more people walk streets. And so when I hear people saying, bring more retail in that area, you have a lot of retail that's already struggling. The solution isn't really the retail. It's about being people friendly. When people are walking the streets, even if you lure them in through affordable housing, rentals, condos, what have you, people will be down on the streets walking around. And the magic of that is more people walk around. When you have more people, you have greater security. You're not by yourself walking a lonely street, what have you. And as you have more people feeling more welcomed and safer, an environment that's active for individuals to walk with a stroller or what have you, other people will join. They will seek out other businesses, and the businesses around will start to do better. As they do better, that's when other businesses come in. But to put more before you have traffic, before you have people, is really putting the cart before the horse. So I really think the solution to having an optimum situation is to create something downtown that does have people living in there. And I heard somebody sent in something, I heard about affordable housing in there too. Fantastic opportunity for that. Be right there in our city. So I would key on getting people in as a source fundamental to success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do not have any other speaker slips for this item, so we'll move on to item 10. And before we start item 10 and item 12, Councilmember Cordy will have to recuse himself on both of those items. You want me to tell, or you want to tell?
I'll just take I'm going to recuse myself on item number 10 because Brian Church Architecture is an architect that's doing some work for me now on a residential property here in Del Mar, so I should recuse myself from there. And then item 12, the property I own is within 500 feet of watermark, so I'm going to recuse myself from that issue as well.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll go to item 10, and Matt will do the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. This item before you is an initial consideration of an appeal of the Design Review Board's decision on applications DRB 1319, CDP 1308, and LC 1306, which are design review, coastal development permit, and land conservation permits for the development located at 340 Ocean View Avenue. This project site is located in the R110 zone. This is a site that fronts both Camino Del Mar to the west and Ocean View Avenue to the east. It is a steeply sloping lot, about 14,350 square feet. It is currently occupied by a two-story flat-roofed structure located towards the top of the lot, but set down somewhat below, mostly below the level of the street. This site is also located in the Wildland Urban Interface Zone, and the surrounding uses are mostly single-family residential, being the R110 zone it is. The project that was proposed is to demolish the existing residence and the detached carport and to build a new single-family two-story residence in approximately the same location on the lot. The net floor area would be about 3,475. This would be a structure that contains or FAR exempt basement areas. So the gross floor area would be approximately 5,410 square feet. The applicants are also proposing to construct a pool, spa, various patios and deck areas, as well as retaining walls, walkways, and planter areas. This project site and its surroundings, its immediate surroundings, are currently home to 11 Torrey pine trees. 6 of those Torrey pine trees are proposed to be removed. I have the site plan up on the board right now. As you can see, here we have Ocean View Avenue to your right, and to the left down below is Camino Del Mar. This dotted line right here is the approximate location of the existing home, two-story flat-roofed home. Here you can see the new two-story home that would take its place. Right, or you cannot see it on this display, but right across the middle of the lot are several Torrey pine trees. Right here, right through this area. These 4 Torrey pine trees, where this excavation and construction would take place, are proposed to be removed, as are 2 Torrey pine trees growing right up in the public right-of-way, right off the edge of Ocean View Avenue. To remain would be 4 Torrey pine trees that form down on a lower plateau of the lot before it drops down to Camino Del Mar, and a Torrey pine tree just off the site on the Blumenfeld residence just to the north. This project was before the board 4 times, the design review board. Originally scheduled to go to the board at its November 20th meeting. There was a very full agenda, and this item was continued to a specially adjourned meeting on December 4th. On the screen, you can see, and I'm gonna let you know that for comparison purposes, I'm using the renderings that were all shown on the cover page of the design review plans. Now, these are renderings that were created by the architect. They're probably not, as I cut them out, not exactly the same in positioning, aspect ratio, but I did my best to try to line up the horizons, because that's one thing that you're going to be looking at here, is where the horizon is compared throughout the process on the different iterations of the plan. And I will admit, when I look at this, the horizon is taller as compared to the existing house on the left, which you'll see in every one of these renderings. It's a little taller than the roof ridge. And as we start going through the rest of the revisions, you'll see that it is maintained in a static position lower than that house. Just wanted to point that out. But as originally presented to the design review board on December 4th, project came in, as you can see it, with a north to south ridge line that was depicted by story poles, and was brought up by staff, staff, the design review board, and neighboring property owners to be a project that would create private and public view blockage. It had concerns regarding its neighborhood scale and compatibility. There were several elements that were brought up that were unnecessary bulk and mass, and there was a concern that it was going to disrupt the natural features and vegetation of the lot. The item was continued by the Design Review Board, and they came back to the February 26th meeting after performing revisions on the plans. The main revisions in this time period were structural components at the west end of the lot were moved to the east and to the south to address concerns that were brought up regarding private view blockage from the neighbors to the immediately to the north, the Blumenfelds. The roof ridge from a north to south orientation was realigned to be, as you can see, more of a east-west, and then different roof alignments were employed to try to bring the project down some and restore public view blockage that would be lost and bring the scale down. They also removed the entry roof, this large entry structure came off, and which did open up some views. The project, while they had made some revisions, the Design Review Board felt that there were still inconsistencies with the Design Review Ordinance, and at the February 26th meeting, they continued the item with direction for the applicants to go back to the drawing board and try to address the remaining issues of public view blockage and some issues that were still outstanding with the Blumenfelds. At the March 26th meeting, the applicants returned. Additional west elevation revisions were made to address the Blumenfeld's view concerns. That was done by pulling back further some of the west elevation overhangs and patio improvements. As well, the master bath was moved from the north side of the master bedroom to the south side of the master bedroom, which opened up more view from Ocean View Avenue to the west. The entry gate structure was removed in its entirety, as you can see. As you can see here, and the landscape plan was revised. At the end of the March meeting, the Design Review Board had determined that most issues that were before the board at the beginning of the review back in December had been resolved. However, one major issue was still outstanding, and that was the issue of the possible unreasonable view blockage of significant public views from Ocean View. Therefore, the applicants returned in May. As you can see here, at that time, the revisions included lowering the house, all levels of the house, by 1.5 feet. By 1 foot 2 inches. The roof pitches were lowered from 2 12 to 4 12, which you can see when looking at the hipped roof structures. They are much lower now on all components, and they removed the master bedroom chimney. The Design Review Board on May 28th approved the project as it was revised, finding that it was consistent with the standards of review required by the Design Review Ordinance, the Land Conservation Ordinance, and the implementing ordinances of the local coastal program. As well, early on in the after some review and discussion, also felt that the tree ordinance provisions were being met, and that removal of the Torrey pine trees was warranted due to the constraints of the lot and topography and the amount of Torrey pine trees and where they were located on the lot. The Design Review Board also added conditions of approval to ensure the long-term maintenance of the public views that were being preserved by the revised design. The recordation of a view covenant to be determine the heights and limits of the view covenant across the northern and southern parts of the lot, as well as what was termed to be the view gain area where the existing home was going to disappear. And I'll go back to that. In this area, this was actually termed, and you'll see exhibits from the architect in your packet, where this area was termed a view gain area to ensure that vegetation or nothing else would be grown, placed there to block that new view across the lot. as well as the preserved views along the sides. A covenant is to be recorded, and as well a revised landscape plan to ensure that the vegetation to go in those areas matches the limits of the view planes in that area. An appeal of this project, of the Design Review Board's decision, was submitted on June 10th, 2014. The appellant, Joseph Dietz, who lives directly east of the project, states in his appeal that the project would continue to create unreasonable blockage of significant public coastal views, and that the design detracts from the natural beauty of the coastal area. There are several letters of support for the appeal from neighboring property owners who had also been active in the design review. And there is Red Dot correspondence as well that's been sent in. Based on the Design Review Board's extensive review of the project and the revisions that have been submitted, staff does recommend that the board uphold the Design Review Board's decision to appeal the project conditionally, with the special conditions added for protection of the long-term maintenance of views. Staff does feel that the board reviewed the information, and that all of the items that have been raised in the appeal and the correspondence was thoughtfully deliberated by the board, and the decision was made to approve the project based on the fact that it would not be unreasonable based on the standards of review of the DRO, the implementing ordinances of the CDP, and the Land Conservation Ordinance. With that, are there any questions?
No questions from council? Thank you very much, Matt. We've got many speaker slips. So the first one that I think I received was Linda Deftos. What?
What we should probably do is the appellant first for 3 minutes, then the applicant for 3, followed by the public.
Sorry. Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Brian Church. Appellant. Oh, Mr. Dietz. Okay. This is all, okay. Mr. Dietz, would you please come up, give your name and your address?
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the council. I have lived here in Del Mar for the past 64 years. I live across the street from the development that is planned. I requested the appeal after all that you've heard and meetings that have taken place, not only on my own behalf, but on behalf of my neighbors and the general public. We're limiting myself again to the basic point of the review board, I feel, has missed the basic requirement of trying to preserve what scenic views we have available to not only ourselves but the general public, other than Del Marians as well, because there are many visitors who come through our area, stop and look, enjoy. I believe that the board erred because they failed to try to preserve what we had, and they've compounded it. I say that first, back off a moment. I say that there's no necessary requirement for that house to stick above the existing house level. The house that is planned for it has available to it many floors or areas down below that have exclusive views of the scenic marine area, without doubt. But they are going to deprive the public of that view of the ocean from the street. I think it was further compounded by the Design Review Board when they decided to give away part of that scenic view by offering to the applicant the opportunity to raise it above the existing level from 12 to 18 inches. I believe, from what I have seen, that that was interpreted in a way that was not the direction from the design review board themselves. However, it nonplussed them, and I think they went ahead in the misled feeling that they were doing right. I would like to ask the council to consider our appeal, to at least review what we have there and see if we cannot preserve some of that scenic view for the public. That is our intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, do I do the applicant next?
Yes.
Okay. Brian?
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, thanks for your time and consideration. Brian Church, 152 27th Street. We've participated in a pretty extensive and thorough DRB process, CPP process over the last 18 months. During that time, I've met with all of the neighbors and with the DRB members to discuss the site, the views, and the proposed design. Given that it's a fairly complicated site and with a lot of impacts from neighboring properties, we presented the project in at least three different ways during our presentation. One is to cut a section through the existing building and the proposed building so that you can see the changes. This is basically overlaid so that you can see the yellow is the existing house chimney, the red is the proposed roof above that, and the blue is the portion of the existing house that gets removed as part of the new design. The proposed design, second floor, is pushed to the side so that there's a view corridor on the side that currently isn't there now. We also wanted to point out that the house is lower than the existing houses to the left and the right, so it's certainly in scale with the neighborhood. We also presented this in a perspective view, so you can see that these story poles were then highlighted so you can see the yellow is the existing roof, the red is the proposed roof, the blue is the portion of the views that are going to be opened up as the trees are being removed, and this purple here is the area that's being opened up as the part of the building is removed. This is representing what that might look like with that removed. And then this is the rendering that Matt showed showing that area. There are trees down here beyond, as he pointed out at the bottom, the Torrey pines that will remain, but we've got the view covenant basically protecting that part of the view through the middle. The third and most important way is just that the story poles. We have certified story poles on site. Each of the DRB members got to see those on site. I met with them, made sure there were no questions that they had that went unanswered. We had a lot of discussion on it, so I hope you appreciate their hard work and my hard work and uphold their decision to approve the project. With my remaining time, I wanted to just take a few minutes to say a few things about the design review ordinance items and discussion.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, Mayor Haydu and honorable city council members. In the few seconds left here, I just wanted to tell you, for one, I'm counsel for Carrie and Michelle Marsh. And I think that after 4 hearings, the DRB did exactly what it was supposed to do and exactly what your code says. They appropriately dealt with the public view concern, and they did that in 2 ways. They saw that there was going to be a view opening, but then they smartly said, let's make sure that view opening stays. So they imposed a deed restriction. And the Marshes are satisfied with that result and are going to live by the letter and the spirit of the deed restriction. And then in addition to that, the landscape plan has to go under yet another review, which we think is totally appropriate and fine. And with time up, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, we'll go back, and now it's Linda. Could you please come up? You've got 3 minutes.
Linda Defdos at 225 Torrey Pines Terrace. And when the initial project was, they were doing the community, whatever that, I forget what it's called. I was out of town when that letter came in. And so by the time I got the letter, when I picked up my held mail, I already had, for that first meeting, I already had a paid workshop that I'd already paid for that was scheduled for that afternoon. And so I called Mr. Church and I said, can't be at your meeting. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll have other, opportunities for the neighbors to, we'll be revising. That never happened. That never happened. I called him again and said, that it just never happened. And you guys have a letter that I wrote. I submitted, hand-delivered last Monday, a week ago. The computer graphics, I don't believe. It depends on what elevation those are, the perspective that those were taken. When I walk along the street or drive, I do not see any ocean until after I get to the north end of the building. That's mainly because of the way Andy and Jeannie's house is situated. I see no ocean. And that's a public view. That's what I've been there for 40 years, a little more than 40 years, when I went through this process. And the time I went through the process, the way you got through the design review board was to have your house blend in with the natural environment as much as possible and not be what I call a monument to somebody's ego, whether the architect or the thing. My house is on, I think, 11,000 square foot lot. I have a house that's 22.5 that I raised. I had a husband and myself and 3 children that were raised in that house. It's not necessary. It's totally unnecessary to take public view away. And to me, as the daughter of a consulting forester on the East Coast that grew up on 180 acres of land, 60 of which I still have, those the Torrey pine trees are what enhance the view. So although a bunch of those trees have what I call been umbrellaed, and that's really sad to me, so that they look like an umbrella, the views through the branches of Torrey pine trees are what make it special in that area. So main thing is the computer generated things that Matt had up before. I don't buy it all.
Thank you very much. Clive Friedman.
I had a slide or two that I'd like to pull up, if I can find them.
No, that's not it. Do you know where it... Right.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Clive Freeman, 301 Hidden Pines Road, Honourable Mayor and Honourable Council members. So I'd like to say a word or two about this potential approval, and the key issue that I'd like to address is that of significantly improved public views, which were the way that the changes here were represented at that 28th of May Design Review Board meeting repeatedly. And I'd actually like to take issue with that. The new design is clearly much higher than the existing construction on that site. So yellow and then red above it indicate from the architect's diagram from the meeting the modified height of the building. This blue area is the area which is potentially given back in inverted commas to the view, but that's, as you saw, that's by the side of the building, so that is a very directional viewpoint there. So if you subtract one from the other, you end up only with a gain in very selected directions. And I've summarized that here, picking out the direction in which there's a putative gain in green. Now that gain only occurs if you look vertically close to the ground. You don't see that gain if you take a panoramic view of the overall view of the horizon, which is what you would typically do. So even in the green area, your view is reduced, the public view is significantly reduced. And in the red areas on that diagram, the public view is significantly reduced again. So there's really no reason to assert that there's a gain in view. So I put gains in green in inverted commas there. There are substantial losses to public views because of this development. So the quick summary is the viewpoint for significantly improved public views was very carefully selected, which is a useful thing to do, and if you're very well represented by well-paid individuals and have legal advice for such proceedings, exactly what you would expect to see. But it's a very carefully selected viewpoint, and you can lie by omission, so we have to be careful about that. The majority of viewpoints are adversely affected, as is summarised here, and even at the selected viewpoint, the panoramic view is significantly reduced because of the construction height. So there's an inevitable consequence in increasing the height of the building, and that's exactly what you expect. You're increasing the height of the building, so you reduce the overall views. So public views are impacted by the design. It's irrefutable. There are reasonable alternatives for the design. The site is quite large, and there's plenty of scope for producing a magnificent building on that site without protruding into public views. And therefore, in this instance, I think that review by the council is significantly warranted. And I know that the staff and the council work extremely hard, and that's widely appreciated by the community. And I wouldn't suggest additional work needlessly, but I think in this case it really is a warranted concern that a little bit more review here would be appreciated. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Andy Blumenfeld.
Hi, good evening, Honourable Mayor, City Council members. I think that this is a very difficult situation. The DRB worked exceptionally hard to get a compromise between both sides, and we had multiple meetings, and clearly the applicant did make some accommodations. Certainly from our property, which is 336 Ocean View, immediately to the north of the applicant's lot, they shifted their building and preserved our primary view to the southwest. And we appreciated those changes and are in agreement with the current footprint of the structure in terms of our view lines. We're completely satisfied with that. It is unfortunate that the structure does still rise above the existing height of the old house that's been there for 50 plus years. It is a very large structure that they're building with a big walkout basement. There is some bylaw that has allowed that basement to have a full open area that allows it to be a walkout basement. And it's just unfortunate that it couldn't be dropped an extra foot, because that would have resolved, I think, everybody's issues. And I'm not sure the best way to go forward. It's a pity to waste the City Council's time on a debate that has gone on so long already. But if there's a quick and easy solution, to my mind, that would be it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We've got two speakers slips left. One is, and Jeannie Blumenfeld will be giving her 3 minutes to Ole Snyder. Is that right, Jeannie? Yes. Thank you.
Sure. I think so, yeah. I'm Ole Snyder. I'm at 280 Torrey Pines Terrace around the corner. One of 30-some homes that drives by the property every day. So it's an impact not just on the local neighbors, and that's why I've been at these meetings. So I'm just going to blast through some slides in this short time because I'm not sure how many of you had a chance to visit the site, and I wanted to try to give you some perspective visually. If you've read the packets or visited, you may already have seen what you need to see. But I think it's important to note that recent DRBs have been able to keep pitched roofs well below street level, not just existing height level, to preserve ocean views, and they've done that with vigor. I show you another pitched roof below street level, not below existing level. I think you all recognize these homes, and these have been accomplished. This site was topographically challenged, and they knew that when they bought it. I want to remind you that the community plan from the 1970s highly prizes public views. It asks to improve them. We spent a lot of money undergrounding wires in this area to improve public views with just wires, private views with just wires, and these are protected. I know there were a lot of meetings and you saw a lot of rigmarole, but those meetings were really designed to help the Blumenfeld's concerns. They were very detail-oriented, and public views were not even considered by the applicant until one meeting at the end when they finally made some concessions. This is the forest around this home that is going to disappear. It's a significant impact. If this impact is going to occur because they weren't creative enough or didn't want to spend the dollars to save some trees or wasn't their their desire, we deserve to at least have some of our impact mitigated. This is the road view. All these trees above are going to be missing. This is I took from them so you would know, you would recognize them. This is a blighted landscape with this view gain right here that is actually fabricated. And that's why the DRB approved it 5-0. They were presented these arguments after the 4th or 5th meeting, and the graphics up here said, you're getting a view gain, we'll put a covenant on it, and it didn't really exist. We're not experiencing a view gain or we wouldn't all be here. This is his diagram. This is all Torrey Pine here that's going to stay. You can tell where the horizon is. He just obliterated it from the diagram. Flower pots are going to be in the way, or a parked car is going to be in the way, and these Torrey Pines, you cannot remove them with this covenant that is proposed. So the view gains didn't occur, or aren't going to occur. And we couldn't comment during a design review board meeting when it was closed. We couldn't point it out. If you've been to the site, perhaps you've seen it. Another one of the architect's diagrams, you can see those Torrey Pines are going to be right here in the proposed view gain. And that's why the DRB voted, in our minds, incorrectly. Here's the story poles, and you can see that it's an 85% take of ocean view if you start doing fuzzy, square footage math off of pictures, which I'm not asking you to do. It's a gut call. But we drive by it, we see it every day. And is this really something that they need when they have 3 levels of whitewater ocean view? Do they need to take from the community in order to have that roof above their heads? From the south, story poles up above, all ocean view is gone. Is it necessary? Here's his own diagram. He just showed it to you. Is this really necessary for what they have below all whitewater view? That's the question of balance that you have to ask yourselves, and that's why we're asking you to review this. So that's all I have. I really appreciate your efforts. We know it's hard. We know a lot of city work has gone into it. Mr. Dietz funded this appeal. The neighbors really care, and we appreciate your attention to keeping Del Mar what it is.
Thank you very much. So this is an appeal, and if 2 council members want to hear it, then we will be scheduled to be heard. So are there any council members that would like to hear this appeal? I guess that's 4-0. So, well, all right, so we will schedule this appeal for, I'm sure there's not a time certain, September sometime.
Probably September 2nd, or we need to get with the applicant too,
Okay.
but looking at that.
All right. No, this is an appeal. So thank you very much for coming down, and now we go on to item 12. Kathy, will you make the presentation, or Adam? Okay.
Just let the room clear a little.
Yeah.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Item 12 tonight is the proposal for a specific plan process for the property commonly called Watermark. It's located at the southeast corner of Jimmy Durante and San Diego, and it is owned currently now by Watermark DM, a limited partnerships. Staff anticipates an application. We do not have an application yet from these owners for this property. And the request, as it has been portrayed to us, has been to change the parcel's north commercial zoning to one that would allow a multifamily residential zone on the property. The legislative changes that are associated with that includes a community plan amendment, which is a general plan in other cities, a rezone or a new zoning designation, a local coastal program amendment, and then the numerous discretionary actions that would most likely follow with this. It would be a design review board permit, a land conservation permit. It is in the bluff, slope, and canyon overlay, so review against that. Review against the lagoon overlay zone, of which it's also in, a coastal development permit, and a floodplain development permit. When staff began looking at the various different methods of processing this, there's the sequential method, which first creates the zoning chapter in the municipal code, and then is followed by individual processes that look at all the other legislative changes, and then followed by the discretionary actions. However, with that, there is no ability to weigh any of the project benefits with the legislative actions. Instead, state law, per our government code, allows the specific plan process, which is something that the city has used in the past, however, not necessarily on residential projects. Shy of in the 1980s, when the Carmel Valley Precise Plan, which was done under an earlier government statute, but in a similar process where in light of that development, there were specific public benefits. A specific plan process sets special development standards that apply to a specific geographic area, and it encompasses the legislative actions as well as the regulatory development parameters. It also allows that public benefit of a project can be addressed and looked at in light of the various different factors. It does not preclude, and would definitely in this case include, the discretionary actions, the DRB, etc. But it is a different way of accomplishing the legislative changes. The specific plan process also requires a public participation or community participation program. However, it does not define what that process is. It allows that up to the local jurisdiction. In this case, the applicant has proposed an informal process as well as an enhanced formal process. The informal process is an interactive website, listservs, meetings with neighbors and stakeholders, an internal advisor group, and meeting with Coastal Commission staff outside of Del Mar's approval. Because it's a local coastal program amendment, it would be required to go for Coastal Commission approval as well. The formal process for community participation would be the CPP program, the Citizens Participation Program, and then an additional 3 workshops that the applicant is proposing. The scoping meetings associated with the environmental review according to the California Environmental Quality Act. Additional presentations both with the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board as this makes its way through the process, and then the formal hearings with the Planning Commission, the Design Review Board, and then the City Council. A staff and the potential applicant have concurred after much discussion that a specific plan process with an expanded community process would have more benefit than a standard zoning change. And we request your direction on, should we get an application from this property owner, on implementing the process. We have a resolution for you in attachment A that we are looking for either your adoption or suggesting modifications to all or part of the process as we move forward. So with that, I will entertain any questions.
Kathy, you mentioned that there would be an internal advisory group established. Is that going to be a city council advisory group?
No,
or would
this
that
is,
be owned?
excuse me.
That's fine. Go ahead.
This is something that is proposed by the applicant, and we would be in charge of the formal process. The informal process or additional actions that the applicant would be undertaking, and I presume they've put in a speaker slip and could address that specifically.
Yes, Terry.
Kathy, the specific plan process, I think in the packet you mentioned that that is something the applicant would develop or put together, or it would be the city that does that?
It would be the city's process. The applicant would pay for it and develop the language, but it would be much like they develop plans and specifications in a design review packet. It is the city who would be analyzing it and making the recommendations to council, because it would be the zoning change would be the city, so it would be the city's specific plan.
And a specific plan it targets a geographical area.
Correct.
Correct. In this case, are we saying that that area is specific to the Watermark property, or are we saying it could be more than the Watermark property?
In this case, it is being proposed as the two properties that are under ownership by Watermark.
And in the process described, the city council has the final authority to approve the specific plan, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Please turn off your cell phones. Thank you very much. Any other questions of staff? Thank you, Kathy. We have several speaker slips. So the first one that I received was Herschel Price. No, nope, you were not the last one.
Well, anyway, I'm glad that I get to speak on this. Herschel Price, 1757 Grand Avenue. I live in the area, and a lot of my neighbors live in that area. And I had sent in a email to you requesting that this go to a specific, to a vote of the people. It's a specific plan. Garden Del Mar went to a vote. I know it was under Proposition B. Our new City Hall, I understand you're talking about having a vote there. And I think it would be important that a majority of the people, if this development is to be developed, should at least accept it into the community. It shouldn't be a burden on the community or the property. The reason, and first, the reason I really put that in was because of what they put in their letter when October 14th, when they applied, they sent this letter in that they were applying. They said that they wanted an FAR of 70%. Well, when you take the entire property, the unusable part, you're talking about 70,000 square feet of units that could be in there. That's a big piece. That is a big thing. And they want 20 to 25 units per acre. Now, this is going back a few months. I don't know if they've changed it. But I remember when I was the chair of the Planning Commission, and I was on the Planning Commission 8 years, Adam Birnbaum and that planning staff made Batter squeeze that whole development of theirs down to 16%. 16% of that lot, and I mean, spending 3 or 4 years, 5 years, I don't know how long he did it, and now we're jumping from, according to them, what they want, 16 to 70%, and it may vary down from there. But to me, that is a very intense use of the property, especially given the bluffs and the overlay zone. So maybe things will change as time goes on. They have an informal process and a formal process we're going to go through. Maybe things will change so that a vote would not be needed. But at the time, you want to be on guard. At least I do. I did want to say a couple other things real quickly. They want 10 to 12.5% in addition for affordable housing. This is what the law evidently says they can do. I don't know if they can do it on the specific plan, but these are the things that are going to have to be answered. Like I said, the development should not burden the property, and it should not burden the neighbors. It should not burden the neighborhood. I think there should be absolutely a 100% full environmental impact report. And of course, it hopefully would have to go to the Coastal Commission too. So I'm going to keep an open mind at this point and follow the process. And when I feel like commenting again, I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marco Gonzalez.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Marco Gonzalez with Coast Law Group on behalf of the applicant, Watermark Del Mar. First, we're here to talk about establishing a process, but I'd like to say to Herschel and others who are here in the audience, we welcome your comments on the project. Some people might think, since we're here to talk about the process, it's too early to start fielding these sorts of comments. We may not have the answers right now, but I think it reflects on what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create a very, very transparent process. Setting up an informal side of the process, as a land use attorney, one of the things that I'm frustrated when I'm representing the community is getting documents. We've committed to putting up a website where you're not going to have to search for these documents, whether it's comments that have been previously made or a draft of the specific plan or the EIR when we get around to it. We're going to make that readily available right there up front, and an opportunity for people to put in their comments right there on the spot online. We're going to put together an independent advisory group, and the reason we're doing this independently and really privately on our side is so that we can foster some dialogue from some interested parties in regular meetings, kind of behind the scenes, so that we can get their honest, very upfront approach to things as they go along. So we've contemplated bi-monthly meetings, and we contemplate that the attendees of these group meetings would be in the neighborhood, commercial, affordable housing, environmental, and at-large categories. We think that'll be really helpful. And then moving forward into the more formal stage, we've proposed these 3 additional workshops, and we've broken them down so that the specific issues that are of concern to the community can be addressed independently. Sometimes when you have a workshop over the whole project, we find the affordable housing folks don't feel like they were heard, or the environmental folks don't feel like they were heard. So what we've tried to do is break this up so that when we have the workshops, the things that go together can be discussed together. So at the first workshop, we would talk about the density, the affordable housing, and the aesthetics, those things that kind of wrap up together. At the second workshop, we talk about traffic, pedestrian access, connectivity, and parking. And at the third workshop, we talk about the environmental issues, given our proximity to the wetlands and some on-site wetland resources, some night sky, and some stormwater pollution issues. We'd also talk about the bluffs and noise issues at that third workshop. So we're really here to answer your questions. We're here to constantly field the comments of the community. If we don't have answers today, they're going to go into our book, and we're going to come around with answers at some point, but we're at the outset. Because this is such an important project at such an important location in this community, we want to give this added level of transparency and kind of vision to this. However, you know, with all due respect to Herschel, we don't believe it's appropriate to bring this to a vote. Measure B is very specific about the geographic area that this council or the people have determined should go to a vote, and this falls outside of that. Garden Del Mar, City Hall, we're in the core commercial area, the urban core of this community. This is a proposed residential project outside of that core area, so we don't believe that a vote would be warranted at this time. However, we are committed to transparency and having, you know, as many meetings as it takes to make sure everyone gets heard, and hopefully we'll see this project evolve into something that at the end of the day we can all stand proud of. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Before he goes on, just to let everybody know, I don't know how much time you took, but I just realized afterwards that Tony gave you extra time, so the city...
We're fine. If folks have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? No
Thank
questions
you.
right now. Thank you. 2 more speaker slips. I see Annette Wiesel has given her time to Arnold, so if you would like to come up, you've got 6 minutes.
Who's after them?
Thank you, Annette. My name's Arnold Wiesel, 2139 Heather Lane. I must admit, I always get the adrenaline and a little bit excited talking in front of people. It's not my thing. So 6 minutes should do me well. I'd like to, and first, following Marco, I truly understand his concern about not having a vote, not putting this to a vote, rather. But where I was confused was that there should be absolute transparency. And that's where we go to the core of what this is all about. Enough transparency to see the voters of Del Mar. That's the transparency I think ultimately our government wants to see our full voting residential community. We want to see them transparently. We want to see all of them come to the voters' booth and vote for something that has been contentious, seemed like forever, until Bader Kay, whom was genius in mitigating everything to the point where they were approved. In fact, I was the first person to stand up and I said, fantastic project. But their sensitivities, their mitigations, and I think even Herschel mentioned something about the amount of land use as compared to a project that's calling to destroy what has been, what is customary, what you see throughout all of Del Mar. You know, the height restrictions are changed. They're allowed higher height restrictions. They can go back further in their setbacks. There can be more density. The list goes on. And I think conformity to what Del Mar stands for, what it appears to be, is an integral factor in whom we are, in spite of someone's notion of a good idea. We are a community with history, and we do have a feeling in our presentation, and I think it needs to be adhered to. And I think Del Mar residents don't want to give up on it. I've talked to too many Del Mar residents, and there is so much energy, not only concerned, but against this project. I think we all understand, well, there's so much I'd like to talk about, and now I have half my time left. When there's so much conflict going on, which I don't know if you hear it as much as I do, because I'm somewhat besieged. I'm a lightning rod, if you will, against this thing. And when there's so much conflict, and I think you do know a lot about it. I think that the government that represents these people, the residents of Del Mar, have an obligation to cause an initiative here for a vote. And it has been done. As we all know, the Garden Project and, voting is done. And when something is, again, this contentious and this problematic, and there are so many issues, it often makes sense to go to a vote rather than waste the government, the city's valuable time pursuing and nurturing this thing on and on, only to find out that all your efforts were frustrated and all the taxpayers' money was lost. It seems a far better way to go to see if the city really wants this, because if the city doesn't want it, what are we doing here? I do understand that with workshops and meetings, you have those that are willing to be actively, noticeably involved. They'll be present. But I also realize that the silent majority, or most people, if you will, that's not their cup of tea. And although you might have those meetings, you'll never be able to replicate the full force of public opinion, which would be fully represented in a public vote, which again I call for. And I hope if there's one thing I can leave here and know that you might remember a bit about, it's the initiative to vote. It is the public vote. This is serious enough, contentious enough. This is not a lighthearted event. So, I guess 35 seconds. Please be as sensitive as you can to realize that this will be a dogged fight, and it doesn't have to be. This is not a moment of crisis and conflict. This is really a moment to vote, and I hope you can do all you can to foster that goal. Thank you.
I see another speaker slip coming around. Pam, you're up.
Good evening, Council Mayor and Council members, and the audience that's here, and also in watching TV. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I do think it's important that we consider some items that have been brought forth tonight, and that is the scale of this project and the huge change from what's already been approved and has gone through the process. 5 years, untold hundreds of thousands and probably millions of dollars to get that thing through the process. And now we're talking about taking something that was 16% of the lot coverage and going to 70%. That is massive, and that location is already fraught with problems where it is right now. We've just gone through the Del Mar fair season, which was almost unbearable half the time. You couldn't go in or out, and now we're in the racing, which blessedly seems slightly less bad this year, and we will be having a second race meet coming up in a couple or 3 years, whenever that is decided, and we'll also be having the Breeders' Cup. So we're getting a lot of impacts on that area, and I understand there's going to be a traffic circle as a part of this project, which does seem like a good use. However, I must say you have the fire department there, which must get out to do emergency calls. You have the little San Dieguito, which has the wetlands and has some businesses there, has a lot of residences that depend on that as their way in and out. They don't have another access. And then you have the normal traffic back and forth on Via de la Valle, and you're going to put 70% lot coverage. It's going up. It's going to be huge. I mean, we tried to scale it ourselves. I think we should see a three-dimensional model of whatever comes forward. And I think that would be a good idea for Marco and the team to look at, because I think this is way too big. And I do think it has to be reduced down greatly. And as far as a vote, I actually agree. I think it should go to a vote. I understand no developer wants to do that. But honestly, I think in this case, it needs to be done like it was done for the plaza, for the hotel. This is not out of the character of the city of Del Mar. Thank you.
I have no other speaker slips, so in light of the discussion, we just want to put it out there, the city does not have an application. This is the beginning of the process. So as the city, we do not know the scale or the mass of this project yet. Is that correct, Kathy?
Absolutely, we haven't gotten any of that.
I mean, we saw a workshop, but that does not mean that that's what they're going to come to us with. So I think I just wanted to bring that up so everybody knows that that is one. And I think, you know, in light of the discussion, we need to approve the resolution and move forward with this process with Watermark's application is filed. We're also, in light of the many inquiries about zoning changes, both within our central commercial under Measure B and as well as elsewhere in the city, we should ask staff to return to City Council with the potential processes to address these zoning changes proactively. This may include updating to other Pacific plans and other modification as Council directs. So I'm asking, you know, Council if we could direct staff to come back to us to look at the whole city as far as specific plans, because we've heard of other projects that are coming forward, and you know, in light of that, maybe the city should be proactive. So council discussion. Anybody would like to discuss anything?
I'd just like to clarify this comment. What we're asked to approve is a process for a specific plan process for this particular project. And if I understand what your last comment is, that the issue of incorporating zoning changes in specific plans needs to be addressed for other real or potential projects.
Two separate things. One is the watermark issue, and also directing staff to come back to us about other specific plans.
So are you proposing delaying or modifying
No.
the current proposal?
No, not delaying.
Just saying there's another layer to be added?
And to ask staff to come back to us in September with looking at other specific plans for.
Well, let me just say that I appreciate the public comments, and it's a little bit difficult to distinguish the process for looking at this proposed plan from the plan itself. We're talking about an abstract element. We've seen, had one workshop where we saw some elevations, and that's basically it. And so we talk about 70% coverage versus 16% coverage. 16% is a known entity because it's an approved plan, but we don't know what 70% is going to be. So I think the process has lots of opportunities for public input, plus it has Planning Commission and Design Review Board approval, at which point whatever the plan is at that stage can be commented on, changed. And so I think the process has multiple opportunities for public input, which is good. I hope it is as transparent as Marco depicts it. So I think the process will work for this project, and I think putting it in a specific plan process rather than going through 4 independent review cycles will work better. And it's actually, I think, moves the project forward a little bit faster, which gives more opportunity for coherent public comment, because if you have to comment once a year for 4 years, you'll have a harder time getting the public comment out and keeping it on track. So I think this process works. I'm anxious to see what the plan looks like when it starts appearing, and I think the council can make more commitments about a public vote or not a public vote when we see how the process works at each step. And certainly the council has the final stage of approval on the specific plan, so if there are problems with the plan or it's still controversial at that end stage after all this public input, we'll have to consider exercising the wisdom of the voters.
And any other council discussion?
This is a very, very important project for the community. It's in a location that we hope is going to be developed in a way that fits with the community, is a pride of the community in what takes place there. I am concerned, as any resident would be, that it be done right, it be done well, and it be done in a way that we can all be proud of. As far as a process is concerned, I think the specific plan process is the way to go, because it gives the community the maximum amount of opportunity to comment, to influence, and to have an impact on what the developer is proposing. And I think we will see community benefits, we will see modifications, and if their intensity is too much or too significant, we can get direct feedback by the specific plan process. Now, I know there are folks who want to have a public vote on the project. I think that is a little bit premature, because we don't even have a project. We don't have the public input yet. I can promise that, at least as one council member, if the project comes forward and there's a lot of controversy or a lot of disagreement and it's not a clear benefit to the community, then I'm sure we're going to have to struggle with it at the council level. That's what we get paid the big bucks for. And it'll be something that I'm confident this council will reflect the attitude of the community. It has done, I think, pretty well. But that does not preclude a decision around a public vote, but I think that's not necessary now, and I don't think it's, I'm trying to assume that it won't be necessary because the specific plan process will be done so well. So that's my challenge, and I'm hoping that that will take place.
Cheryl.
I do have a comment. I just want to say my goal is to help move the certification that we just gained with the housing element, rather than have Del Mar continue to be, well, I'll put it in a positive way. The plan has been certified by the state, and we have, as a staff and as a council, been working systematically to meet the goals of the housing element. And my goal would be to achieve those, the plans as readily as we can. We can't forget that we will be penalized and have a hefty fine if we ignore this. So that's the reality of this plan.
All right.
Can I just, for the public, there were a number of red dot letters in support of this which weren't entered into the
Yes.
record.
Okay,
and,
sorry.
And one was from Don Countryman, one was from Dwight Warden, and one was from Bud Emerson. Two of those individuals are on the Housing Element Advisory Committee, which had worked diligently for the past 2 years to find some place in the city that would accommodate housing for low-income individuals that was not downtown, because Prop J advice was that low-income housing did not belong in the central commercial zone. So they provide support for the process. And again, this is a process decision. But as Cheryl said, we do need to make some progress on meeting our housing element goals, and this is one potential route that would help us.
And what about asking staff to come back with potential addressing the zoning changes, being proactive for looking at different areas in the city that may need zoning changes?
Ask you a question?
Yeah.
You mean zoning changes specifically for affordable housing?
No.
To benefit
no.
that?
This is all over the city that, we've had inquiries that different projects may come in. That has nothing to do with affordable housing. It has to do with, any specific plan.
A general.
Yeah.
Look at the zone.
Yeah. So if we're proactive, of this, that, then, yes, Watermark goes ahead with their Pacific plan, but in other areas that, may come up in the future, that we've already have something in place. We can direct.
Well, I don't know how proactive you want to be. I would like to see projects associated with a specific plan. And so when you talk about a zoning modification, are you contemplating a specific plan that encompasses Measure, downtown we already have Measure B, so that would mean abolishing Measure B and changing that, or I'm just trying to envision what.
Well, we could ask staff to come back with some suggestions on this, because in the future, to look at different areas. We have different areas around the city that not even with the downtown. We have several projects in the downtown that could come forward, but we also have some other projects that have been asked by the city.
I think what I might be able to add to that is, we have other, not applications, but people coming to the city talking about development. And basically the two types of scenarios that we're being posed with at the staff level is, if the development's not allowed by right in the zone, there's really two options that they have. They can go through a zoning code amendment change, or they can do a specific plan. Those are kind of the two options. And so there was a little bit of discussion on the staff level when fielding some of the questions regarding this project as to whether or not we don't have a set process. That's why we're going through this process with the applicant tonight, is that we don't have a set process for this type of application that's beyond the commercial area. So if it happens in the residential area, north commercial, even on our own property here, we don't really have a process that we've vetted out and talked publicly to be able to guide that process along. And that could be a good thing. You can independently modify the process based on what you see an applicant come in, or we can standardize it, you know, such as what we did in Measure B for the whole commercial area. We could standardize a specific plan process for other areas if you want. So that was the question that we were kind of struggling with at the staff level, because we're getting those questions. I can tell you right now, we've had 3 other questions that are in this area of zone change or specific plan, and we're still watching to see what comes of those inquiries, but they are being asked.
So I just thought if we were proactive and, you know, looking at this and having staff come back with us with something.
Yeah. Well, I'm still a little unclear as to what problem we're trying to solve, but I'm open to any presentation or any overview that would describe the nature of the problem and what the benefits would be either way. But we need to tread carefully on this, I think.
Yeah. But, okay, so we could ask staff to come back with us with something, okay? And then, yeah, Cheryl.
One more question. I just wonder what other cities do. It seems like zoning changes are organic. They come from need rather than are imposed from the top. So I guess I'm having a hard time, like Terry and Dawn, to wrap my mind around about this whole topic.
Yeah, we can come back and define it better. We kind of held that out as seeing how the conversation went tonight, but we can bring it back as an item that describes kind of what we see out there happening.
So I'd like to move approval of the resolution of the City Council of City of Del Mar affirming the use of a specific plan for the processing of a proposed development located at the southeast corner of Jamie Delaney Boulevard and San Diego Road.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's 4, it's unanimous. So thank you very much.
Send Al back in.
Al, come on back in. And we'll move to item 17, and that's our citizen survey. That was very hard to do.
Oh, you're here.
Did you go to sleep?
A little bit.
Good evening, Mayor Haydu and members of the City Council. One of the City Council goals for this current budget cycle is to conduct a citizen satisfaction survey. And in May, the City Council opted to proceed with a hybrid approach to the survey, using Probolsky Research to help us develop the survey questionnaire and then to build the online survey and host that for us and create a report summarizing the results. And then staff will do the marketing and prepare postcards advertising the survey that will be mailed to all registered voters. So since then, working with the consultant and the City Council subcommittee members, which include Deputy Mayor Cordy and Councilmember Sinat, the draft survey questionnaire in your packet this evening was developed based on goals for the survey that have been articulated by the Council and the subcommittee. So to review key themes for the survey, the focus is on understanding satisfaction with core services provided or funded by the city. Those who take the survey will be able to rate their level of satisfaction with different services, including what we've categorized as public services, which would be things like maintaining streets, roads, sidewalks, parks, and the beach. public safety services that are provided by the city, like lifeguard, parking enforcement, fire prevention, and ranger services, and also law enforcement services that are paid for by the city but are provided by the Sheriff's Department. And then lastly, administrative services, which includes things like responding to citizen concerns and keeping residents informed. For each category, there's also an open-ended question for respondents to note what they think the city can do to improve in that area. So tonight we wanted to have a conversation with the council about the survey and hopefully get your direction to proceed. If the council would like to make changes to the survey, then we need to have very specific direction from you on what you would like those changes to be. And as far as next steps, based on City Council direction tonight, we will be building the internet survey, designing a postcard that will be sent to all registered voters, letting them know to take the survey, figuring out and coordinating all the logistics of getting that mailed out, drafting a press release, and then we would be aiming to launch the survey by early to mid-September. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yes, Terry, Don, somebody.
Kristen, hi. Thank you for describing this program. Looking at the draft survey, I'm a little bit ambivalent about how much this is to say the city provides all these services and how much it is to say people are satisfied or dissatisfied with the services, since this lists everything that we do. It's very comprehensive, and yet some of the items are things that most people, services that most people don't use. So you send out a survey to everybody and say, how are we doing on graffiti removal? I can anticipate we're going to get a lot of
Not a whitewash, not a whitewash.
no opinions.
No opinion is an option.
Right.
If
So
they
the
have no
question
opinion.
my question really is, when we get the answers, what are we going to use them for? Is this going to be for trying to improve city services, or is it going to be feel good?
I think a couple things. I mean, I think on one level it provides a baseline of where we're at, where the community's at. It also points out things that may have been surprising, things that we didn't expect, so that people may come back and say, we're very dissatisfied with how we're providing graffiti removal services. And then it provides an opportunity for us to look at how we are providing services and figure out where we need to redirect resources. And then before you know it, we'll be gearing up for the next budget preparation process as well. And this becomes a useful tool in that process also, and looking at where you want to structure things. There are a couple of questions toward the end of the survey that I think will be really useful. One ties to what you're saying, where, if asking people if there's more money to spend, what areas would you want us to emphasize more? I think that's telling. What are the really important areas for the community? And then if there's one thing that we could change for Del Mar to make it a better place to live now and in the future, what change would you like to see? And I think those kinds of open-ended questions will be really telling too, to see what's important to the community.
Terry?
Are we still in questions?
Yeah, we're still in questions.
I don't have a question.
You don't have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Anybody else have a question?
Sorry, if I could just make one comment. I think that it's also valid, though, if you feel that there are too many services that we're covering and you want to propose that we should not include some of them, we're very open to that, and that's part of why we're here. So,
Cheryl.
I don't have a question. Just have a comment.
Okay, I sort of have I don't know how to phrase. I'm going to try to phrase this as a question. One of the things in here is maintaining sidewalks. Not all of our sidewalks are city sidewalks. Is that correct?
That's correct. That would be
so. If I answer here that I'm very dissatisfied with the way the sidewalks are maintained, but I'm talking about on private property, that doesn't give the city any idea of what people are talking about. So, I mean, some of these things in here, I mean, how do you distinguish between what the city owns? Because I'm sure a lot of residents don't know city does not own every bit of sidewalk. So some of, so.
Well, that's a great point. We do have a place where they could elaborate on any particular concern they want to bring, and then if they are interested, we also have an opportunity for them to provide a phone number so that we could talk with them more too, to understand, if there's specific areas of concern. But that is a really good point that you bring up.
Okay, and the other one is providing animal control services. Does the city provide animal control services?
Yeah, through contract, we do with the county. So we do provide that.
We pay for them.
So when there was a, what? No, it wasn't a skunk. It was, I can't think of what it was, in our neighborhood. Mountain lion. In our neighborhood, not mountain lion, God.
Wasn't it a mountain lion?
Was it a mountain lion? In my neighborhood, they were told to call someone else.
That's a service.
That's a service. That's not a service.
Animal control is really focused on their primary focus is on domesticated pets, so dogs and cats and things like that, and helping us with that. They can be a service to connect us with specialty help for like coyote relocation and things like that come up.
So if I want my skunk relocated.
They're going to tell you with a skunk, they're going to refer you to go to the private sector.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions of staff? Since there's no other questions of staff, we'll go to public comment. The first one, I tried to call on you earlier, Kit, to come up for another item, but now you've waited to item 17, so.
I realize this survey is primarily geared towards satisfaction, but I also know that there's expense in doing the survey, so it seems to me there is an opportunity to ask some additional opinion questions. On the survey itself, one thing that I've been surprised at lately in how many conversations this has come up since the person at the last city council meeting brought up the comment about overhead wires. I'm on a village association committee that's been asked to review our streetscape plan and give you guys some recommendations as far as priorities. The undergrounding the overhead wires is something that it came up at that meeting, and then it's come up in several other places. You have on there, how are we doing with adding additional sidewalks and stuff? Knowing you have one coming up in fall that you're going to add right where there's a key line that needs to be undergrounded first, in the, liking to be financially responsible, not spending money and then tearing it right back out. I would love to see somehow that get into your survey, and possibly questions about Watermark, possibly questions about City Hall. So
thank you. All right, next speaker slip is Barry Antus.
Barry Antus, 411 11th Street in Del Mar. Last week we had the police chief of the district in Encinitas come to our Budget and Finance Committee, and she was kind enough to bring us information pertaining to average response times to the various categories that the sheriff uses. And I believe that the item should be brought to the community as well. I think that we should ask the community if they're satisfied with the response times by the sheriff's department in the various categories. For example, priority 1 calls, the response time is approximately 11.9 minutes, which includes serious accidents, airplane crashes, or SWAT actions. Category 2, priority 2 calls are about 9.5 minutes, and they include homicide, kidnappings, rapes, armed robberies, and residential burglaries in progress. Priority 3 calls a average of 13.7, and that's for reckless driving under the influence of alcohol, hit and run, or property damage. And priority 4 calls of 41.9 minutes average, which includes loud parties, prowlers, vandalisms, trespassing, and burglar alarms. I believe the community needs to err in on this subject, and I think it should be added to the survey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're into council discussion, and as we start council discussion, I have to say, this survey is way too long. Reading it, because I'm supposed to read it as a staff, you know, as doing this for my homework, I guess I'd call it, I went, oh my God, I can't see being online answering all of these questions and filling out some of the detail that, you know, that was brought up by Kristen that you can fill out. We're going to get very few people filling this out. They're either going to get tired of it, they're not going to finish it, or they're just going to look at it. I think, you know, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and condense this. I don't know, I mean, how? I'm not on the subcommittee. So, but that is what I feel. I'm not happy with going forward with this survey. Any other comments now that I've put my 2 cents worth in? Yes, Terry.
Well, I think we started out with the basic motive of we know we are delivering a lot of service to the community. We have a lot of folks doing a lot of good work. And the purpose of putting together an instrument was to verify and get some hard baseline data on how well our services are being received by the community. We were tempted. Where'd she go?
She's over there in the corner hiding.
No, not Kristen. We were tempted, and there were a lot of suggestions around putting in other opinion questions like, you know, what do you think of City Hall, and what do you think of this, and what do you think of that? And we tried to resist that temptation because we wanted to focus on a very basic, how are our services received? And also with the intent that we're hoping that this type of reaching out and surveying our residents is a start of a fairly routine process where if we have other citywide issues, we can go out and ask them about other citywide issues. But this survey was, I think, designed to be fairly basic and fairly targeted towards customer satisfaction. And the reason being is we wanted to come back, whatever data we were able to collect, come back and have it be of use to staff, of use to the city manager, so that to the extent that there's anything there that can, as the opening statement says, that can help in continuous improvement and help us do things, this would provide it. Now, it's hard when you start listing out all the things that the city does, it can become lengthy. And so to the extent that it might be hard or lengthy, we can look at it again and try to scale it back. On the other,
why not doing 2 surveys, one now and one, you know, several months, focusing on one thing now, one thing later?
well, that's always an opportunity that can be done. Now, the point that we also faced at the time was when we drafted this a week or so ago and did our version 5, I think it is. We also received the information that Barry discussed from the sheriff captain saying, okay, here's some response time numbers, and so I think the suggestion around maybe expanding question 8 to provide a little bit more detail as to whether people are satisfied with their response rate is a good suggestion. So anyway, this is a management tool, an attempt to get direct feedback. If you don't ask, sometimes you never will know. And so this is an attempt to ask the right questions, and if it's so we really need feedback on the process and whether we can go forward.
Don.
Yeah, I have 2 levels of concern. One is I think it is a little long, and I've actually gone to the trouble of striking out some of the questions I think won't have enough responders to make any difference including providing walking trails and bike paths, maintaining landscape medians. I don't think we're going to get many people responding. So I think it can be shortened without losing the central thing. The other thing, this is a satisfaction. It's not going to be statistically significant survey, because when you send out these kind of customer surveys, what you're going to find is, what you hope to find is that there's 1 or 2 areas where there's a lot of complaints, and there are enough people complaining you can take it seriously. The problem with all these questions is, I think we're going to get, you send it out to all our registered voters, right? I would anticipate on this kind of survey something like a 10 to 15% response rate. So you're going to get 150 or 200 people and responding. Those people are going to be biased by 2 factors. One is they're going to have time to fill out the survey, because they're not going to be gainfully employed. They're going to have to sit around and fill out surveys rather than doing something productive. And 2, they're going to be people with complaints. So they're going to be people who have some issue that drives them to take the time to fill out this survey. So when you get these survey results, what's going to happen is you're going to overrepresent people with problems with the city, and you're going to get a very small number of respondents on a lot of the questions. So if you get, if you say, how are we doing maintaining sidewalks? And you get 20 responses and 10 people are unhappy, what do you do with that information? We're already trying to improve our sidewalks. What do you do with knowing that 10 people are unhappy with our sidewalk condition?
And they may not even be our sidewalks that they're
Well,
unhappy
yeah,
with.
I picked on sidewalks. Tree trimming, I don't think should be on there. Tree trimming, it's a service. We trim public trees. So people are going to confuse public tree trimming with private tree trimming. So I think you want to ask questions where the answer is somewhat unambiguous. Question 7, parking enforcement is too strict. Most people complain about parking enforcement are citizens or visitors to our city who get ticketed because they don't know the parking rules or stay too long or have a 3-hour lunch. I don't think that question is appropriate for this kind of satisfaction survey. What you get when you ask that question is people who've gotten ticketed in the last year will say, I hate the system, and people who haven't been ticketed won't answer. So again, when you design a survey, you're trying to get answers that inform policy. And to me, some of these questions wouldn't provide an answer that informs either staff or the council with new directions. When you start asking about response times, we've got some data for that. That's the kind of a question that is going to inform policy, and I think that's an important issue. We've already got some preliminary results from the prior survey. I think that could be valuable for considering how we deal with public safety. So I think if you try to get a survey that covers everything, each element gets diluted because you're getting fewer and fewer people who are going to take the time to complete it. So my sense is that if you can compact it and drop out some of the questions that are not so important, you'll make it shorter, easier to complete, and you can focus on more important issues. And for the people, the subcommittee that has labored over this, I've got specific suggestions that I can pass on.
Well, in fact, that would be very helpful, because as we do, version 5, and we're moving to version 6, I think we're at the point where those kind of specific suggestions would help us work things out and get it down to one response to your thought. This information is inexact. It is not. It will only be partial. It'll have some ragged edges to it because of some of the things you described. But I think it's something that, as a group, we can use to improve ourselves, improve the way we do things, and so that's the spirit of it.
And I think, some of the questions, and I know it's going to be difficult, but like one here, how satisfied are we with our ranger? There are probably people in my neighborhood that don't even know we have a ranger. What ranger? That kind of thing. The Lone Ranger. I knew you were going to say that. Okay, besides the Lone Ranger. But, that's where it's going to be hard to know.
if you get to the point where every respondent knows everything about every question, we will never ask the questions. So there's undoubtedly going to be people that will answer it in a wrong way or with incomplete information or say have no opinion whatsoever. But I think asking the question is in a limited way, as you're describing, I think will be very valuable.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I'm not speaking yet. As one of the liaisons, I guess I wanted to hear the other comments from all the other council members. So I haven't heard from Cheryl yet.
Yeah, Cheryl, go ahead.
I was impressed with Don saying maybe the questions could be guided by what informs policy. I sometimes have heard us saying that we want to have this tool to be able to tell citizens and residents where we feel we're doing a strong job and direct us to where we need to improve. But there's not a question about urgency about the improvement. How grave is the change necessary? So there's no method to judge that either. I think if you redesign this, maybe Lee's idea of cutting it down into 2 sections would be a good one, and also incorporate the idea of what would in fact change policy.
Al?
I guess on the question of 2 surveys, I mean, how would you break it down? And again, before you answer, I guess when we approached this, when Terry and I approached this, we originally started off with like 60 or 70 questions from the survey 5 years ago, and we too wanted to make it more concise and simpler. And in one way of doing that, we focus it just on services that the city provides, trying to answer those questions. So I guess I'm asking, how would we break it down? If one was the services, what would the other survey be?
That I couldn't come up with myself. And whether you break it down, I mean, you know, some of these things in here is like, I mean, you could take off, this is just, you know, just throwing it out there. Providing fire protection services. You know, a lot of residents probably don't even know what that is, and, you know, don't know how that, brush management, you know, I mean, that only relates to a certain area that is in the fire zone. Providing emergency medical services, I mean, it's a great question, but how many people have actually used emergency medical service? I think we want to do this survey to what most of our residents are, would be using, are needing. You know, I mean,
what impacts the most
citizens? Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Preparing the city for emergency and disaster preparedness. Most citizens don't even know that we've even worked on that. So so this is the very beginning. They're going to get lost in this, and then they're going to go, okay, I'm not going to. I think you need to look at it and put things that people would be the most interested in first. You know, maybe over here, number 18, you know, back to street maintenance, you know, improve sidewalks in the commercial areas. There's owned by the city, you know, that kind of thing. And people are going to go, oh my God, you know, they won't know what that is. But recreational programming, beach maintenance, those things impact everybody. Some of these other things really, you know, and the administrative services, probably most people don't know that we manage, how we're doing in managing our city financing. You know, I think we're making it too broad because we know all this information that, you know, we think, well, let's ask the citizens. But I guarantee you, if you went around to probably 20 citizens before September and asked them half of these things, they probably wouldn't, as citizens at large, not your friends, but, you know, but I don't think they would probably know half of these things that we do. I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of a different approach. I'd rather ask them and have them tell me that they don't use the services.
Well, then you're going to lose them, because if I was filling this out, I would probably go, I mean, I don't know how many stores I go into, they say, fill out this survey. You know, you could win $500 or, you know, or $1 million. But that one I fill out. But the rest of them you don't, because you're satisfied. You know, if I'm reading this and I'm on the beginning of it and you're talking to me about providing fire protection services and stuff like that, I'm going, that doesn't pertain to me. You know, and you're going to lose a lot of people.
I do want to say that, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of work. I'm not sure what Rafalski's doing in all this, but I think just condensing it a little more, I don't favor doing 2 different surveys because each one costs more and you're just compounding the problem. The second one, fewer people will respond to. So let's just get it over with and see if we can condense it and see what happens. But I am concerned that we get information we can use out of it.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of the comments. Again, I think Terry and I both do that. I guess we're just trying to figure out where do we go from here. We've looked at trying to make it more concise and simpler and focusing down to the survey. I don't disagree that if we can make it shorter, we should. To the extent we can eliminate some of these services like the graffiti, that, you know, just if we eliminate half of the things that we don't necessarily need response to and focus on the ones that I think we're more in tune with, that'll shorten it in itself. I also like the idea, and not like the idea, I think we should figure out how to include a question on, how does the community feel about the response times for especially the priority 4 questions, and then maybe some other questions regarding to the police. Explaining the ranger might be helpful, but again, if that's the direction, I just, if I'm going to go back and work on it, I just want a little bit more direction. We did, to the cost, again, we kind of looked at it and said, let's not spend $15,000. We approved $6,000 or $7,000. Pretty much we've spent it now. So I think we should finish this up, simplify it, and move forward. I do think that we will get response. I do think it's simple enough. I don't think it's too long, and I think that we will get some valuable information. I don't know how else to get a sense of the broader community than doing some kind of a mass communication or a survey, and I don't know if this is it, but I'm striving to do that.
You look at the surveys, that we sent out a survey, oh boy, I can't even remember what survey it was, that's how bad I am. Kathy, it was something to do with something we had going forward.
We did have a survey for the village-specific plan 2 years ago.
Didn't we have something more recent that? City Hall. Yeah, thank you. And, I mean, we got very few responses with that. And, so I think, and that was not a long survey.
Well, that was from the half of the people who knew we had a city council in town today.
Don has, I guess, forwarded some comments to Terry, I guess, to the extent that you or Cheryl have more specific comments and just want to jot it down to the survey. Too long, eliminate this, or whatever, not to put any more work in it. We will take that and then try to come back with a survey that meets everybody's.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And try to make this decision.
Send that feedback to Kristen.
One thing
That's
I
where it
thought
needs
we
to
should
go.
add is the recycling opportunities and that wasn't mentioned in here.
How do you like the recycling?
Yeah, I mean, you want more of that, or?
All right, so I've got homework to do, is go over this, right?
Right, and then just send
Thank
it
you
to
very
Kristen, and
much.
then we'll work.
Yes, all right, Kristen, you'll get it sometime.
Are we hearing also an okay with asking about the response time for sheriff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, Kristen.
Clarification, and then we'll bring the survey back in September then to look at?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to item 19, council priorities. Do we have from the subcommittee, do we have a city hall update?
No, because we're meeting on Wednesday.
Okay.
Because of various schedules, we haven't met since the last report.
Okay, all right. And do we have a Shores update? You're not meeting now, right? Is that correct?
We are doing a process where we're looking at the proposed consultants who will help us. We had a meeting last week where we culled it down from 10 candidates down to, is it a total of 5? 4. And so we're going to have those scheduled where we interview them. There's a subcommittee of 4 people that will interview them, and plus staff, and so we're making progress.
And do we have any other council priorities, reports? No other? So We do not have any city council meetings in August, so our next city council meeting would be September, and we'll have an annual update from the Sustainability Advisory Board, also an annual update from the Finance Committee, and the update from Parks and Rec that was continued from today, presentation by Delmar TV Foundation regarding programs and activities, housing element zoning code amendment, and approval of the revision to the city conflict of interest code. So it is now 8:29 and we're adjourned. See everybody in September.